this is from Suriname. It's a Dutch, sort of Protestant synagogue. No imagery, but also hardly any decoration. It's Sephardic aesthetic. If you look at the Portuguese synagogue in Amsterdam, there are similarities. And the Venetian synagogue. And it was yesterday I talked with Harasa about the 500 years of the Venetian ghetto. And this is from the ghetto, from Venice. Yeah, and we have an Indian one from Cochin. Yes, we talked about that too. So, well, then there is this is an older photograph. Amitai, whom you all know, he reinstalled the Israeli art collection, but the Nimrod in the center here of Danziger is still there. And I don't know if you've seen the new rehang of the Israeli art collection. It's very interesting and meaningful, I think. And so this is our third wing. So Israeli art, as you know, there is this division since 1982 between international art and Israeli art. A division that probably doesn't exist in any other museum in the world, that you have the focus on the, let's say, national art scene and international art scene. But we try to work together, and this is also why I'm so glad to be here and spend the day with you. Because I could never be the curator for Israeli art, but it's interesting for me to see, international art also connected to Israeli art, and also, of course, the other way around. So Amitai and I talk a lot, and I always try to include Israeli artists into the exhibitions of international art. So he's somebody I really love, Zvi Goldstein, fantastic work. The Wedding, we have more of his in the collection. In the art wing we have the Art of Americas, modern art, very beautifully installed by Adina Kamien, head of modern art. The connection between Fluxus, Dada, in the vitrines, and then pop art. Aesthetically, it's not very close, visually, it's not very close, but the attitude towards reality has a lot of similarities. So I think it's wonderful. Also the Tom Wesselmann from '65 is a beautiful painting, but mainly consists of advertisement. The Budweiser, the cigarettes, and the baguette that goes into the painting is all taken from real advertisement. It's a great pop art work, although he never wanted to be part of pop art. So we look from surrealism. You all know this by heart, do you? I mean, I don't know. It's my favorite room in the museum, with Kossoff and Bacon, and I don't know if you've seen our new acquisition, Alina Shapovnikov. It's a self-portrait of this. She was long forgotten, not really internationally known, until Documenta 2008, when she was presented, and she's a Polish artist, Holocaust survivor. She studied and worked in Prague and Paris, and you see from the material that she used that she is in awe. Maybe also the kind of statuetic, that she was inspired by Giacometti, and behind her self-portrait there is a drawing by Giacometti, and there is also in the same space Annette sculpture from 55, and this is 65. So she casts her own face. She casts in later works different other body parts too. She uses ready-mades, and she invents, she reinvents herself with all the handicaps and illnesses she had. And she died when she was 47, very young. So I just go through and show you what I like. I love James Turrell's Space That Sees. It's a It's like a temple in our garden. On the other side of the Knesset, which I think is the third temple, the Knesset, I always go see it every morning when I go to the museum. And this is sort of this is a very spiritual temple. It's beautiful to see the infinity of the blue sky, and in Jerusalem it's mostly blue. In other sky spaces, and he made 80 all over the world, which and we were one of the first to have it in '92. But here the sky is mostly blue, and sometimes there is a cloud flying over, and then it's this painting, endless monochrome painting, turns into a film, or when a bird flies over. Yes, again, Zvi Goldstein. He, I don't know if you saw this. I didn't see it here. The exhibition on the occasion of the renewal after the renovation, the inauguration after the renovation in 2010. And he picked and selected objects from all departments, from above ground and underground of the museum, from the workshop places, from different collections from all wings, and installed it in connection to his book that he has just written. And he was one of 3 artists that were invited in 2010 to do a solo exhibition in connection with the exhibition. And I think I saw it in Düsseldorf. It traveled to Düsseldorf, and this is where I was at the time, and I saw this show, absolutely crazy, and it looked as if it comes from another planet. I imagine that if you saw the exhibition, you could connect those objects to the design department. You could connect the Japanese screen to the Japanese collection and so forth. But seeing this in Düsseldorf, this idea of encyclopedic, but of course fragmentary, very subjective approach to a collection, I remember that it was sort of fascination and helplessness. So this is a show we did in the Contemporary Art Department last year. Unfortunately, we don't have collection spaces for contemporary art. I don't know if you ever recognized or recognized that there is no collection space. So we do exhibitions that are based on new acquisitions, that are based on the collection. So here, for example, Unstable Places, Isheket, with works by Wolfgang Tillmans, Dayanita Singh, Indian photographer, very interesting, Moshe Nino, it's the glass structure that Eichmann was put in when he was on trial in Jerusalem in '61, and he found this glass cage that still existed, and photographed it in a very enigmatic way, as if you are, well, it's the perspective of the camera, the perspective of the photographer, of the artist, and in the end of the viewer, you are inside this cell, transparent cell. And in the front, Katinka Bock, it was a donation from the French friends from Paris, this a little bit surrealistic stone under a huge table, which is too big to speak, to have dinner, to communicate. Yeah, new acquisition, Francis Alice. He was here 10 years ago. He did the Green Line.
Yeah. This is my favorite piece all over the times.
Yes, the Green Line.
Yeah.
The Green Line.
This?
Oh, this here. Oh, yeah.
This is my favorite episode.
Yeah. It's a very beautiful painting.
Beautiful.
And he uses gold leaf.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the material that you depict, not you, painters from medieval times depicted Jerusalem,
mm-hmm.
the golden city, golden Jerusalem. So he took this gold leaf material and applied it to the separation wall, and which was just built when he was here on residency in 2004. And there is an sort of, it's not an instruction, it's a project concept, and it said covering the separation wall with gold leaf on the west side, covering the west main wall with gold leaf on the eastern side. This was what is written on the 2 pages here. And I think it's the way he paints, it's so dry, it's as if he's mirroring or bringing the landscape really onto the canvas. Very dry. And then this separation wall, which goes over the diptyque from one to the other. It's a great work. And the green line, I didn't know. It's the video where he has a bucket and it's green paint and there is a hole, and he recreates the green line from 48, Moshe Dayan's green line for the Armistice, in real space. So he goes through Jerusalem, 15 kilometers from south to north, and through yards and gardens and checkpoints and so on. And the screen is dripping behind him. It's a great work, and what I didn't know, nobody can buy it. I always thought it's in the collection of MoMA. It is, but they announce it. But it's open to everybody. You can show it. Everybody can show it. His videos also, we have one in our collection. Everybody can show it. Different to the paintings, which are real ownership. So, I don't know, did you see the exhibition? Yes. So maybe it's very boring that I talk about it. It's so Luc Tuymans with Dimona. It's a powerful painting, which looks like Dimona is not existing really officially, and it looks like a mosque and a minaret, and also the tower, of course, comes from German history or European history, Holocaust, that he deals with a lot. And you see in the back that there is Bruce Conner, the footage that he took from the atomic tryouts in the Bikini Atolls. And on the right hand, Felix González Torres works. Yeah, this is Bruce Conner, Crossroads. It's a fantastic film already from '76. He's a sort of artist, and always used pre-existing material. He never filmed himself. So you see the beauty of the atomic bomb exploding in the Pacific Ocean from different perspectives. The best cameras were there at the time to film the event, and not all of them survived. Yes, Mira Perek, her great work, Abram, Sarah, in Hebron, she filmed it in Hebron, and these opposite sides of the routine of taking out the religious objects out of the mosque, and then on bigger Jewish holidays, taking the objects the Jewish objects into the mosque. I never thought it would be possible for Jewish people to pray in a mosque, but it's not the architecture that defines the space, it's the ritual and religious objects, the books, or in the case, here, the carpets. So it's also, in terms of editing, a great 2-channel video. And Oma Fast, yes. We talked about Israeli art, and so Amitai and I, we acquired this work together by Oma Fast. There was no work of Oma Fast in the collection, and then you hear some people who are asked to donate the acquisition committee for Israeli art. Sometimes you hear voices and they say, he's not Israeli, and but so what is Israeli? And he lived here until he was 8, and I think that his work is very much influenced by his parents. Still live in Jerusalem, and we were very happy. I thought 5,000 feet is the best, I think, is his most interesting work. So I was really happy that he made it possible for us to acquire. Yeah, this is Petri Talilai. He's from Kosovo, and he installed in our courtyard a nice work. It's a necklace that his mother buried in the garden when they had to escape the Kosovo War, and when they returned, the house was ruined, and she digged up the necklace, and she still wears it today. And when he became an artist, he was a child at the time, 14 years old. When he became an artist, he monumentalized this work, well, the necklace, and we acquired it and he installed it, and it has a history that is very closely related to the objects we have in the Judaica department. A lot of our Judaica artifacts were hidden, needed to be buried, and very often the owners didn't survive. And it also has to do with displacement, homelessness, in a broader sense, also in a more contemporary sense. What kind of memories can objects carry? Can artifacts, jewelry, souvenirs carry? Yeah, Tacita Dean. It's a new work of Yellowstone National Park. It's a photogravure. So she took an old photo of Yellowstone Park in the US, enlarged it, and inscribed, like she very often does, I don't know if you know her work, in a very film-like manner. She inscribed locations or a kind of narration, a drama into the landscape, into the setting. So this is Hell's Breath, for example. Hell's Breath, God's Home, post-Nigger Chaldeanic world, full of continuity errors. So it's well, it's not a simple narration. It's a very kind of complex, but also a little bit tribal, ritualistic place that she creates. And I thought it's interesting because it's the Yellowstone Park is a landscape that was inhabited by Indians, by natives, American natives, and a lot of their stories played in this. It's a dramatic landscape full of geysers and volcanoes. And it's the same in Israel. The landscape inspired biblical narration, and this is also a reason why I thought it's an interesting work. If you look at Lot's wife, who is still standing as a salt pillar when you go to Eilat, or the burning bush, and a lot of landscapey features that entered the narration. Gathering of Strangers is by Nathan Colby. He's not so very well known. I saw this work at Istanbul Biennial 2 years ago, and I thought it was the Gezi Park protests. It's nearly 3 years ago, 2.5. And it made sense and was a nice work to see in Istanbul at the time. But I thought it's also interesting for the Israel Museum, not only because Jerusalem has a lot of different people living next to each other, also the visitors of the museum, but mainly also all the objects of the museum from different places, from different times, in one building. Gathering of Strangers. And from the beginning on, and because what I said, it's such an unusual museum for somebody like me who has been working in context of, let's say, museums of 20th, 21st century art, so quite isolated, modern, autonomous art. The idea that the fundament for contemporary art is something else. So this work by Lothar Baumgarten is interesting. Already in 1968, he photographed in the Pitt Rivers Museum, which is a British colonial museum with African, mainly African, but also Asian artifacts. An old museum that is untouched since the 19th century. And all those artifacts are displays, they are registered, and he added the words, what the museum does to all the objects that the museum collects. Valued, forgotten, polished, registered. Yeah, I don't know if stolen is there, but the idea that it doesn't belong, that it's out of context, dysfunctional. It's only an aesthetic experience. We don't know what this pot served for. So this is a slide installation with 80 slides, and it's a great work for our museum. Lutz Bacher, who is, it's also a self-portrait, she's looking out into the garden. Or Camille Roux, who is an artist who, I don't know if you've seen in Tel Aviv Museum and also in the last biennial was her great video, Grosse Fatigue, and it's about different creation myths from different religions, but also stories. In the beginning there was the world, there was fire, there was light, there was, I don't know, many things, thunder, there was nothing. In the beginning there was and it's mixed, and she was in this Smithsonian Institute and looking at a lot of artifacts from the past and animals, and so her work is very much, I think, related to our kind of museum that we have. And she filmed in Vanuatu. This is a film, it's a ritual for men. It's a little bit like 14, 15, going into adulthood, and they jump from a high bamboo tower, and they're only tied to the foot with a sort of plant, a liane, I don't know. So they jump and they don't die, they are taken by the plant. And it's not performed anymore by 15-year-old boys, but it's for tourists. And so she works with an anthropological perspective, but always in mind that nothing is original anymore. And this wing from an airplane refers to cargo cult. It's a cult I didn't know about, but we have also islanders in the South Pacific who once experienced that soldiers come and bring items, or military planes, or from NGOs, and they bring items they've never seen, so they want them and try to convince the ancestors that those planes come again. So it's on some islands, people wood-carved headphones, or they made the signs that they saw the soldiers make to get the planes landing. So they reenact this behavior and rituals they've seen with the people who come with the planes. So these contemporary works are interesting for the Israel Museum because she's not only an interesting contemporary artist, but there is a productive and interesting connection to our holdings, especially in the Department for Africa and Oceania. Yeah, this is the exhibition. Probably you've seen too. We the People, Guf Rishon Rabin, and this is a view on the left-hand side. Auguste Rodin, not very contemporary, from 1880s, replica of the Statue of Liberty. So he recreated the Statue of Liberty in full size, or 1-to-1, and this is a part of her face and with her ear. There were others, part of her robe, and there are 350 parts all in all, but it's meant to be fragmented, on the floor, no energy, and like fragmented, slaughtered. In the back you see Wolfgang Tillmann's it's the memorial for the victims of organized religion. And we wanted to have this work in the Israel Museum because our museum shows that culture and the fundament of culture is religion. You see this in archaeology, you see this in Judaica, you see this in arts of Americas in a lot of collections. But there is also a shadow side to religion. And so this was a work that, it has a title very different to a lot of other works of contemporary art who don't want to narrow the interpretation down, but this did, and in a very narrow way. But you think there is no imagery, there is, it's an abstract work also in the tradition of modernism, and it mirrored yourself. So you were mirrored, and it needs to be installed in a corner. And in the back, Melanie Gilligan, I don't know if you had the time to put the headphones on. It's a very entertaining and also funny, scary narration about a patch that we put in our mouth, and we are all connected. And I can feel your feelings because I wear the patch and you too. So we are all connected, and also companies can infiltrate and can improve consumer happiness, and our superiors, we feel what our superiors think or feel about our work, and if we need to improve. It's a very capitalistic system, and so it's also a work that relates to the topic of I and we. Who are we? What do I mean when I say we? And what do you mean when you say we? And there's always a you if I talk about a we. So who is the other? And so the whole exhibition is, with here you have Horesh and Pavel Althammer, Artur Chmiewski, I don't know if you remember this, all his videos that he shot on different demonstrations, mainly in Warsaw, but also in Germany, Israel, West Bank. So people raise their voice, or they go to a funeral that is enacted in a very specific way, or they protest, they sing, they pray, they throw stones. Very different temperatures of raising your voice, and you hear the cacophony of the different opinions. It's very much a work of opinion. And there are some ways we are born into, we can't change, like skin color. There are a lot of ways that we can choose for, and where we go to, and that we take part consciously. And this highlighted this. And this is a work by Susan Hefuna, and it's a very simple work. She says, she filmed talking heads in Cairo, and they said Anna, 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 Anna. So it goes on and on. And sometimes the simple things are the best. I love this video, and sometimes people didn't know what Anna means. It's like Ani, it's I. It's Arabic for I, and Hefuna said that it was interesting for her that before you say we, and we is something very common, especially in Arab societies, the family, the clan, especially for women. To say I is not always easy, but it's important to say I before you say we. Before you go to Tahrir Place, you have to develop a consciousness about what you want. This is Gilligan. Cyprien Gaillard, he went to Babylon to film how this mythic place looks today. And you see Saddam Hussein's palace in the back with a beautiful view onto nothing, really. Nothing is left of this idea that we can build a tower together, that we build a tower up till heaven, and then God confounds the languages, and since then we speak in different tongues. And so he took his mobile phone and filmed, and then transformed into the huge projector to 35mm, which is also something from the past, like a relic. And in this film you see, for example, people taking some artifacts out of the sand with old inscriptions, some fragments from some building. And really in the end you see Ishtar Gate. That is the one gate that's left over, and it's in Pergamon Museum in Berlin. Beautiful. You get an idea about Mesopotamia culture. It's amazing. But it's also buried in the museum, like a lot of things are buried in the museum. For example, this sukkah. You all know Leah and Diego, and they didn't make, but they conceived this sukkah last year for Hansen House, and so they bought this, probably you know the story, from the Bedouins, Jalali family, and they asked them if they can transform it into a sukkah, so they put the palm trees on top, and yeah, it was for Sukkot. So now the museum bought it, the Urinal committee acquired it as a work of art, and now it was one of the criticisms. Now it's not a sukkah anymore, it's not under the sky. It's buried, it's dead in the museum. But it's an artifact, like we have a sukkah in the Judaica wing, Austrian, from the 18th century. So, yes, this is what happens, even to ready-mades. I mean, the white cube is necessary to give them, you know, their power. It was a heavily discussed work of art. I don't know if you participated in one of the discussions in Haaretz or in the museum, where we had a very nice symposium with I don't know, was somebody of you there? Yeah. So with the rabbi, with the people from the community, the Bedouins, and with an art historian who talked about performativity, and it was interesting. And also different. Somebody said, how can you combine the Jewish history in the desert, the Jews in the desert waiting for the promised land, with today's reality of the Bedouins who are not waiting for a promised land? It's their way of living in a nomadic way. So there were a lot of those different perspectives, and I think it was a very productive work to show. Oh yeah, they came in March, so the former inhabitants, let's say. Well, I don't know. I think I wanted to show you some new acquisitions, but maybe it's enough.
No, it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I should go on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So thinking about acquisition. So preparing exhibitions is one part of the work, but acquiring new works is really something I do not on a daily basis, but it's something that's a very important part in my work here, and we have great support from different acquisition committees. And so the idea, what is interesting to acquire, and what categories accept your own taste or what you think is interesting, is of course, as I said, like with Tassidadin, the collection. So and the context. But also I think it's like we, the people, the exhibition, it's important that it's also not too specific for here. It could be shown also in another place, in another country. So this is somebody I didn't know, Elias Sime and Lurit Shafir, our curator for Africa and Oceania. With her I talk a lot, and you will see that we did the Georges Adiakbo show together. So when I see, I don't travel to Africa to discover artists, so I talk with her, and we had a look at Elias Sime's work, who works with hardware particles from computer, and he lives in Addis Ababa, and he uses these hardware fragments and makes like an ornamental pattern that looks like an urban structure, like a section or a floor plan, and it's e-waste from Western countries that is shipped illegally mostly to Addis Ababa. She's also interesting. I talked to our photo curator, Norm Gall, and we discussed Tomoko Sawada's work, who makes only self-portraits. So she poses as for class photographs, as each individual person and the teacher in school uniform. And here she made a work with, we have 60, but she made 300 self-portraits as different, as a woman coming from different Asian ethnicities. So Korean, or from Singapore, or Chinese, or Mongolian, Japanese, and so forth. And we couldn't tell if this might be the Chinese version, and this Korean. Would you agree? No? On what do we agree? And how do we tell that somebody comes from here or there? And it's a very interesting question that I think is interesting, of course, for Asia, but it's also interesting for the Middle East and for Israel. And it's a great and powerful work, and we will install it shortly, and come and see. Yeah, this is Imran Qureshi. I don't know if you know him. He's from Pakistan, from Karachi, and since I had a look at our Mughal painting collection, which is, we have two curators, one Islamic curator for Islamic art and one curator for Asian art. So they both work on Mughal paintings, and we have a great collection. And I thought Imran Qureshi would be really an interesting contemporary artist to acquire. But he didn't want to. Well, I wasn't sure if he didn't want to. I approached different galleries, and so they didn't really offer something. They postponed, and I know he's a wanted artist, but so it was. And then somebody had his address, and I emailed to him, and then I said we have this great, and explained what we have, and that we would like to make a connection with his work. And he immediately wrote back in 1 minute, "That sounds great, let's be in touch, my Skype address is, we can talk." And then he said, only now I see that you're from Israel, and I'm in Karachi, and I don't think it's possible. So it was put asleep, and now suddenly, the third time we make an effort. And it seems now possible that he participates in an exhibition, and that we can also acquire 1 or 2 paintings. There is, I wanted to show you the Adeyakbo exhibition.
It's on your desktop.
It's on the desktop, all right. So it's an exhibition that we recently opened with an artist from Benin, and Kobi Ben Meyer and I curated it. And we thought it's interesting to invite somebody from a non-Western context who works with the idea of a collection, or not a collection, for whom collecting is artistic practice. And so he comes here, he came here in October, and he picks up things, I called it horizontal archaeology. He picks up things from the street, or flea markets, or Stein bookshops, and so forth, Jaffa flea market, Bethlehem, and he travels and sees things and picks them up, and makes a big collage montage in space, which is sort of turning around the idea of explorer and explored. He looks at us from a perspective that is quite naive, innocent. He's not very much, he didn't study the Israeli-Palestinian conflicts, and yet he finds on the street a lot of items that, as if he wants to say something, comment on it, because it is on the surface of the newspaper or on the books and so on. So it's I think an interesting contemporary work of art, and at the same time something that tells us also about the activity of collecting and building upon a collection as a fundament. Did you see this already? We just opened it.
No.
Yeah. So come and have a look. Yes, I would like to know about your fascination or not fascination, what you like or what you maybe also don't like at the Israel Museum. What does it mean to you?
I'll start.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
For me, the Israel Museum is it's like an island.
It's like
an island. It's in Jerusalem, but it's not exactly Jerusalem. It's a place that you can go and get inspiration or escape the daily life that you have here and get inside new worlds and it's like a different time zone.
Yes. Yes.
I can also say I like it when sometimes it happens that I see something and I'm not really sure if the context is supposed to be political in a contemporary sense, and it might be interpreted in various ways. For example, the Cyprian Bea work that you showed, I really loved it. I thought it was beautiful, and at the beginning, because the text was somehow hidden, but the music pulled me in. I wasn't sure. I thought that he was going to shoot the places that ISIS ruined. I thought that it was like the leftovers of what ISIS ruined, and it wasn't. But somehow it really echoed, the things that you see on the news, but in a very poetic way. And something similar happened with there was this exhibition from the German National Gallery.
Yes.
And there was one work that I can't remember how. I only remember the name in Hebrew, Hamesit. Anybody remember?
Yeah, the one with the hand.
The one like a painting with the hand,
Yeah,
like a guy who was telling
pointing.
about another guy, or inciter maybe. Someone who was like inciting for violence or telling something bad. Anyway, it reminded me about the political reality in Israel. It seemed so contemporary, but at the same time it was from another time. Things like that.
I think it's Karl Hofer. Yeah, it was right at the end of the exhibition on the left-hand side.
Yeah, before the contemporary
Yes,
ones.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah, I think this exhibition was very interesting because it's different even if you know the works from Berlin, those masterpieces from the 20s mostly. It's different to see them in Israel.
Totally.
There's like survivors, and they are in a way. And I thought it was very moving. And it's still on, yes. Yeah.
For me, what you said about the Israel Museum, of a place that shows, different times in history, and it's quite close. It's not so far away from the contemporary area. So I love it when I'm walking and I can suddenly decide to go to a place that was so far away, or and just to see the layers. That's what most interests me. I don't know if there's more museums like this in the world, but are there? Is it common?
Well, there are the big. In the past, they were called encyclopedic museums, like Boston or British Museum, Louvre, Metropolitan Museum. Of course, the collection in Israel, is not comparable to a Metropolitan Museum.
Yeah.
But
the Metropolitan, okay.
yeah. But what I was referring to is that the position of contemporary art in the Israel Museum has been so strong.
Right.
And this is something astonishing and fascinating. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yes, there are other museums like this where you really can travel.
Yeah, in Israel I think it's
in Israel not.
Just the only one I think, right? Yeah. But also the gardens are beautiful. It's just a really nice place to, even like just take a stroll, to like maybe to relax.
Yeah, the garden. I think the garden is very beautiful. It's designed by Isamu Noguchi, also in '65, and there are the more landscapey areas with gravel, so the terraces, and there is this very beautiful tectonic part where he used different kind of stones, natural stones, different kinds of way to work with concrete. I think this is an absolutely great and wonderful part of the garden. He was not very happy. I think he didn't come to the opening, but because it was a huge project. He did it together with Billy Rose. He was the one who initiated and paid, and he was a Broadway impresario, and he brought the sculptures. And for Isamu Noguchi, it was much too many sculptures. He was commissioned to make a sculpture garden, but he thought that the garden is the sculpture, and not that it's the platform for a lot of sculptures that he not liked so much. And you can still feel this, that the garden is a composition on itself.
I have to mention that the work with Suka, it was one of the latest works that made really impact on the local situation or what's going on in the neighborhood, and there was a discussion, what you mentioned also. So I think it seemed at the moment when the discussion was, and also a lot of people came to the museum, that museum is alive. Because sometimes it feels like, it is an island, and we go and it's isolated from the reality. So the discussion and bringing these people there, and also having discussion in the media and also inside, it made some something titillating dynamic, I think. It was very good.
Yes, because it's such a big ship. It's really huge and a huge institution. It is sometimes difficult to connect it to everyday life, and I also think it's not the main task of this museum. It's not something you walk inside like into an off space and you can within 2 minutes start a discussion with. But I think it's always good that we don't lose this connection and that it's still possible. And I also think, but it's mainly also through Amitai's work, through Israeli art, that it's stimulated, and he's having changing exhibitions and project spaces. Yes. You wanted to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that for the last very few decades, we had only in-house curators from Jerusalem or abroad, very few from abroad, but actually they use their terms are located to very deeply inside pain, let's say like a pain of living in this country with daily problems. And it is very refreshing for the last 2 years to have another point of view with, let's say, outsider curators and not in-house, because it seems like plenty of works, contemporary works, which are very common for us, are mostly exotic for other people who haven't been born here. And it's interesting to see the connections that this kind of curators makes between their works, because then we can have another interpretation and another point of view. So it is kind of refreshing.
I take this as a compliment, and I feel this outsider view for me also makes my work so interesting. And I think it's fascinating for me to be every day in the museum and learn so much from my colleagues who are specialists in very different fields I never had any connection to archaeology. And now I'm interested in coins, a section of archaeology. So, but it's I also think it's productive on both sides, and
It's interesting also in this exhibition of Tzvi Goldstein
when you put all the things all together. So I think it's a great opportunity, and making use of this possibility of the museum, this opportunity, because of it has these wings, and then to use it and in this very poetic way, and so it was also nice to see this opportunity that the museum let the artist do and play in a way, and combine, and it's a nice dialogue. It was a nice dialogue.
Yeah, it's great to start. Susanne did it. She was the curator, or she invented this project with 3 artists and invited them. It was Jinka Shonibare, Susan Hiller, and Zvi Goldstein. Also, they're from very different perspectives, also artistic perspectives. I'm not only talking about countries or so. So yes, also great choices. Yeah. All right, so should we go home?
Very much.